You're tuned in to another episode of Recruitment Entrepreneurs by Recruit CRM. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Recruitment Entrepreneurs by Recruit CRM. And today I have with me Arjun Lall. Arjun, can you just give us like a super quick intro of who you are and how you ended up where you are?
Yeah, sure. Again, my name's Arjun Lall, and you know, not like I guess unlike a lot of the other founders you've had and entrepreneurs you've had on this podcast, I'm a little different in that I don't come from the world of recruiting. I'm the founder of a company called Rocket. We're an AI enhanced recruiting agency for high growth startups. So from small startups all the way up to large ones like Hippo Insurance and
And
Coinbase and
and
etc.
Arjun, take us back, right? Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was your first job? Like stuff like that, right? Like even
Yeah,
way before all of this, right? Way before you were successful. Uh,
sure. Yeah, of course, of course.
yeah,
So, I think there's a couple themes which kind of make sense for how I even ended up here today, starting
yeah,
this tech-enabled agency. Um, I've always been really passionate about technology. So I
okay,
grew up in sunny San Diego, and
cool.
I could see the ocean from the field in middle school. So I
That's
remember like
awesome.
having to run laps, which I hated running laps, but I remember you got to the back of the field and you could see the ocean from there, which is pretty cool.
Solid.
Um, and I think the other kids might have gone to the beach after school, and then I was like busy going to my computer or something, doing something
Okay.
techy instead. And it was really that drive and interest in technology and in terms of games that caused me to kind of dive more deeply into tech. I learned how to program on my graphing calculator so I could play games in math class.
That's
Um,
cool.
and then, by high school, I built some software to scam ad clicks and ad impressions.
Yeah.
Um, and this was the late '90s. There was a lot of VC money going out to all these ad networks, and
Yeah.
I actually realized I could make a lot more money by selling the software to other kids in high school than by actually using it myself. And so I
Yeah.
started, selling this. And anyway, it's always just find some tech project to work on, and I found it just
And
fascinating.
and and Arjun, so to cut in, like growing up, was your dream job just becoming like a software developer or running a software businesses sort of thing? Was that so? If someone asked you when you were like 15, what you want to do when
Yeah.
you grow up, quote unquote, like what would your answer have been?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things that I had in mind. One, I was so blown away and impressed by all the tech entrepreneurs of the first dot-com boom that I
Yeah.
really felt like I want to start one of these companies, and
Okay.
that would just be so cool. The other thing was, and it could have been the same, but I also just loved games, and I thought it was so cool. I like
Yeah.
building games. I thought it would be so cool to be a game developer and basically spend all day programming and
And then
then
playing
having
games.
pizza for dinner and then playing games in the evening
Yeah.
and basically just like living in my office. To me, that seemed really cool.
Well, did you actually end up doing that ever for any phase?
I actually
Any,
did. So, funny enough, Rocket's the fourth company I've founded. So I've definitely
cool.
pushed on the entrepreneurial journey, but also my first couple companies were in the gaming space. In particular, there was one called Jam Legend, which was, well, like Guitar Hero for the web. And then
Cool.
we had sold that company to Zynga. And so then I got to work at the big company working on big games. And it wasn't
Yeah.
the first person shooters I imagined. Instead, I was working on Farmville, but, still very much got the experience.
That was a pretty popular game, right? Or
Yeah,
probably still is, right?
it-
uh,
definitely. Yeah.
cool. And
So
and
it
then
was
and then
great.
how did you get into like this whole? So obviously you're a tech guy, you're a tech entrepreneur, and you've been reasonably successful, right? You had an exit, uh, and so when you had those exits, like did you sort of make like the FU money? Did you make enough that you didn't have to like worry about the kind of jobs you did, or like was it just like a nice job, right? Like
Yeah,
what sort of outcome were those first couple exits?
it's interesting. I mean, well, I'll put it into some of the context, which
Yeah.
is right out of college. and
Yeah.
actually in college, I had started my first company somewhat by accident after college. And I basically lived we moved to San Francisco after a
Cool.
little bit of time out of the East. I lived in a small apartment with my two co-founders. I shared a bedroom with one of my co-founders. So we were
Nice.
sharing a bedroom to make ends meet, and we lived and worked in the same apartment. We were there,
Yeah.
all the time. Um, and a lot of it was thinking about, well, if I could just make, X amount of money, then I could
Sure.
fund a startup. And so how many, can I just make enough money to just fund a few startups and then I'll feel comfortable with that? I'll always
Okay.
be able to go back to what I love doing, which is, building companies.
Make Got it.
So I think from that perspective, I've been really successful in that.
Cool.
I can, go, at least for, even especially for this last company, I could kind of go into the entrepreneurial journey and not feel particularly rushed that I have to come start
Got
working
it.
on the first thing that comes to mind.
And now this is sort of like you're sort of going in the opposite direction in a sense, because most people like do services businesses and then go do products. You've
Hmm.
been doing products and games and so on, being successful, and now you're trying to do like a services business, obviously with technology injected into it to make it more efficient and higher margin, hopefully. But like, how did you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think it was an explicit decision to say, oh, I want to go out and start a services company,
Yeah.
or specifically that. I think it was clear that we wanted to start a company that had a clear revenue model
Yeah.
and could generate revenue from if not day one, very early on. But a large part was a real focus on recruiting and hiring and the talent space. We definitely were really connected and hooked on that. But
And
as we evaluated, I
okay.
think the go to market of building software. I think one of the challenges when you're doing machine learning
Yeah.
AI is you just need data, and so part of it was like, how do we actually build this and build it in a way where we can kind of bootstrap it up? And
Yeah.
basically, we came to the conclusion that doing the recruiting ourselves was the best way to be able to build the tech in parallel with.
And, and and like one quick question, right? So did you start sort of the recruitment agency and then figure out, okay, these are the places where we can use tech to make it better? Or did you start by saying, hey, this is how recruiters do it, and I think I can do it better. Let me spend a year building the tech, and then I'll start doing recruiting. Like, which of the two was it?
Yeah, good question. Was very much the former. I don't,
Okay.
I think early in my career, I probably had the ego to think, oh, I know this stuff. And I made a
Yeah.
lot of mistakes just trying to build product without understanding the problem or talking to the
Yeah.
customer to
Yeah.
realize like that just doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, the beginning of the business was literally me, my co-founder, my two co-founders. The two of us were using spreadsheet, Google Sheets
And
as our
and did any
ATS.
did any of you have a recruitment background, or were all of you tech guys
All of
or
us were tech
girls?
guys. Yeah,
Okay.
I think maybe going back to your early question about, me growing up, um, there was kind of theme to this a little bit, which, I could go into a little bit, but, my dad had his own business while I was growing
Okay.
up. And so he would always tell me, the most important and the most difficult part of any business is the people. So I think that
Yeah.
always stuck with me. And I knew that I had dreams of entrepreneurship even at that age. So I kind of always thought, okay, this is going to be important. Um, and then, I was also just, I distinctly remember reading this Fast Company article when I was in
Yeah.
high school. It was about West Point graduates being amazing leaders in the
Okay.
business world. And
Cool.
that really made me interested in organizational structure and motivation in the workplace. And,
Yeah.
and I mentioned I started a company in college, but at the same time, I was interviewing and looking at jobs, and I had a job offer from Mercer Human Capital
Yeah.
Division, and so I was very interested in that space, even if it wasn't my primary interest in
But
tech.
you didn't end up doing that job, right? Because
I
you were
did
not
not.
super.
No, I
Okay.
basically had to choose between doing this startup or taking
And
the
now,
job.
in the interest of the audience watching this, right? So you've been relatively successful, and now you want to start a recruitment agency. How did you go about it? Did you like go in with your co-founders and say, hey, we're going to put up, 100, 200, 400 grand to like start this company, and we're going to give it 12 months or 18 months, and hopefully by this month we make a placement and start making money, and if we don't, we kill it? Like did you go in with sort of that mindset? or like how did you think about all of that, structuring the
Yeah,
business and setting it up?
it's a good question. You know, we were very lucky coming from the world of tech to be able to raise some angel funding from day one. And so,
Oh,
um,
so you
we
raise,
were,
but when you're raising funding, right? So most angel type investors, I imagine, are trying to back tech plays, right? That
Mhm.
could hopefully become unicorns. So did you
Yeah,
pitch this like a tech play versus like, hey, we're just building a great recruitment agency? Like, how did you position that in those early conversations?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, we're one of these strange companies that some people, like, oh, you're a services business, but then obviously there's a big tech component
Yeah,
to that as well. And I think we kind of sit in between. And, there's companies like Compass, for example, that I
yeah,
think are kind of trying to lead the way there somewhere in between. But, from the get-go, and where we still believe is that there are large billion-dollar players out there, the Robert Halfs, the Ronstads, the
yeah,
Adecos of the world,
yeah.
and we squarely believe we can sit amongst them in as a agency that's powered by technology that's doing it more effectively.
And the
And
pushback, right? So today is all of your revenue is 100% of your revenue from fees collected for recruiting activities. So you basically place a candidate and get a fee. Is that all of your revenue today?
that's right. I mean, it's through contingency, container, retainer type business, but traditional
Got
agency
it.
type.
And you don't do any staffing, right? As in like you're placing contractors at companies, collecting
We've
fees, and
done,
then
yeah,
paying
we've done
salaries out.
a minimal amount of that, but that is definitely not the core of our business as of today.
Got it. Got it. So the core of your business is not really managing contractors. It is finding talent and getting them placed,
Correct.
right? Now,
Yeah.
if you had to break your business between contingency and the retained type model where you get paid up front, how would you break that? Is it 50-50? Is it mostly retained? Is it mostly contingent?
Yeah, early on it was pretty much all uh, contingency.
Yeah.
Now we basically have almost all of our clients on a container model, so they pay an upfront deposit, not
And how
nearly.
does could you give us an example just so
Yeah, yeah.
we
So
could sort of
I'm
understand?
happy to be very transparent. So,
Yeah.
our pricing for our clients today is we charge 25% of base salary for non-executive roles, and we
Okay.
charge a $5,000 upfront deposit per role. So
Per row.
that will apply to the placement, but
Got
it's
it.
it's not as strong as a retainer where you have to pay half upfront.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit.
It's not as bad, right? Like
Yeah,
so, someone who knows they're going to pay a 30,000 fee can like pony up 5K up front to show that
that's right.
they're
That's
into
right.
it.
Yeah. And then about 20% of our business is probably the full retained, more executive type stuff. So CEO level placements,
And
VP,
and do you charge more for that? Is that more like 30% or 33%?
30%. Yeah. Usually 30%.
Perfect. And so now going back, right? Like you're obviously three people that know business, but you've never really run a recruitment agency or worked at one.
Yeah.
So how long did you take to get your first client and your first job and actually place someone and get paid? Like what was that journey like?
Yeah. That's a good question. So, we luckily got our first client right away because it was one of our investors
Okay.
who was, someone we had actually worked with previously at Zynga, who started his own gaming company. And so
Cool.
we helped them with a PM search, product manager. And that, I think it probably took close to 3 months to fill. It felt like an eternity at the time. Luckily, we were, staying busy building software and, doing a lot of other things
And
foundational
were
for the
were all
company.
three of you trying to close this position, or was it just one of you that was like trying to close the position, the other two were doing other
Primarily
things?
one of us.
Okay.
But it was myself and my other co-founder and CEO, Abhinav, who were mostly running the search, but he was doing a lot of it, and I was doing a little bit more of the
Got
product
it.
management.
Do you remember the fee you made on it? Was it like 25K or 30K or something like that?
I don't even think it was that high. I think we did
Yeah.
like, we think we did that one at 15%. It was one of our investors were like, we'll give you a good deal,
Just give us business, right?
give us the business. That's right. And so I don't know, it's probably like a 20K fee or something like that, which was still amazing because
Yeah.
in the previous businesses that I've started, even generating 20K of software revenue would just
It,
be
it takes forever. It takes
that's
forever,
right.
right?
So,
Especially if you take the time you take to like build a product and beta test it and then release it and put a subscription model in. It takes forever.
That's right.
And do you remember what you guys did the first year you were in operations? I think this was five years ago, right? Roughly.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think, without getting into the specifics too much, I know
Yeah.
within the first 12 months we did break $1 million in revenue.
Brilliant.
So
So you did 1 million in revenue your first year.
yeah. And
And
so
were you profitable that year?
we were not profitable.
Okay.
So this was the advantage of having the funding that
Angel.
we had. So we were able to hire ahead of our um, revenues and ahead of our growth.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
so
is your funding or investment public? Is it on Crunchbase?
uh, I don't believe it's public on Crunchbase, but we raised a $3 million seed round.
Oh, okay, got it. And so again, right? Like, so I'm guessing if you raised it, did you raise it on a convertible note?
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm guessing that would be a 10 plus million cap, right? Maybe a 10 or $20 million cap. I'm guessing, right?
something like that. I forget the exact.
So
Yeah.
going in with you know zero revenue and three successful, great co-founders, how were you able to convince a bunch of angels or a VC fund to give you $3 million at a 10 or 12 or 15 million cap for a largely services business? How does that work out? Because I'm sure everyone listening wants to do this now. But
Yeah.
how did you go about that process? Was it inbound? Did they come to you? Did you actively run a process where you talked to 40 folks? How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, we're very lucky to have a lot of angels that have supported us through previous startups. So, like I
Got it.
mentioned, Rocket's the fourth company I've started. I've sold the last two companies, and the last one was called Renzu, which we sold to SurveyMonkey, was with the same one same co-founder. And so, I think a lot of those investors, we just sold the company. We stayed at SurveyMonkey for a little bit. At the point we decided to leave, we're back at it again. We just reached out to them again and told them, our vision, and they were pretty excited to
And
reinvest with us.
Arjun, to swing back on this, right? Since you did have a successful exit, and I'm guessing these investors made some money on you before,
Yeah.
right? Why did you want to not bootstrap it, right? Like, because you probably, I'm guessing, right? Again, this is all guessing. You'd already made money, so why did you feel the need to like raise money up front before doing it? Like before, really figuring it out and knowing you wanted to do this. Like,
Yeah.
why do you come to that decision? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a real advantage to one, fundraising early and then not
Okay.
needing to worry about it, because it
Yeah.
is a very distracting process. And
Yeah.
so to do so before you have live customers and clients to support and a lot of software to manage, it's actually nice to like get that done and compartmentalize it. And then the second part is, once you do that, you can go out the gate very aggressively, and you don't need to worry about slowly stepping into things. And so I think that's become very common just in the tech and venture world, is um, using that capital to your advantage. And not
Yep.
certainly early in my career, I wouldn't have been as lucky to probably been able to pull off this type of
Yeah.
fundraise with very little to show for it. But thankfully, now that we were able
Yeah.
to, we definitely used that as an advantage. So, very early on, we hired a head of recruiting. We hired some recruiters shortly after. We started doing some of the work in tech ourselves.
And were
So we
these
were able
folks
to do
with
that.
agency experience? So were you hiring folks who were at successful agencies, or were you again hiring people that had no agency background whatsoever?
Yeah. So, the head of recruiting we brought on had his own agency prior.
Okay.
It was a small boutique, and so he kind of came in and brought some of that agency specific experience. Because I know we did the recruiting and stuff early on, but
Yep.
we weren't. I think at this point we weren't naive enough to think that we could just do it our own way, without coming to this with any
And
experience. And so, it was certainly helpful to then have some of that DNA. And I think that's important to like
yeah,
pair that together. You can't just
yeah. So even if you're like disrupting an industry, it's super important to have a couple of folks from the industry in your team that sort of tell you what you need to disrupt, right?
That's right.
Right. But
That's right.
and so did you not raise any money after that? Like, did you make it profitable and just operate it after that? So have you been like the traditional venture backed company raising an A, B, and C, or did you just figure it out after the seed round?
Yeah, we've since closed the Series A round, which is
Okay,
undisclosed, but we did that in late 2019.
got it. And
Just
and
for the
and how big is the team today?
We're 46 people. I think we have a couple more people starting next week.
Wow. And are they all in California, or are they remote distributed across the US or the world?
They're distributed through the US and Canada right now.
Got it.
And so
And,
that's been a recent innovation since COVID, but it's really helped us out.
solid. And of these 46 people, how many work on the tech side building like the infrastructure for the future versus folks that are actually doing sales and actual recruiting?
Yeah.
How have you split that?
I think there's roughly about 10 that are kind of on the more tech business and product type side of things.
Okay.
And then the remainder are really into the, recruiting operations side.
Got it. So it's still so like 25% of your manpower is doing tech and the rest is like doing the stuff. Though I imagine it's more than 25% of your costs because engineers are more expensive in general.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I know it's funny because a 46-person company might sound big in many ways, at least in startup terms, but we're much smaller in terms of what you think of as a traditional tech company, just in terms of the
totally get it. Just so you know, we are 45 people at Recruit CRM, so I totally get I totally get what you're talking about. And so next question, right? Now that you've raised a bunch more money, your investors probably want you to go and build a unicorn, right? Is that wrong? Is that a wrong assumption?
No, I don't think. Yeah, I think there's, we have a goal in mind. Like I said in the beginning, there's, these large recruiting agencies that are out there, and there's no reason why we can't be amongst them. There's certainly a lot of challenges along the way, but that's very much what we're looking for. So absolutely.
Brilliant. And so what are your plans over the next 3, 4, 5 years to get there? Right? Like, you're obviously building some tech. Would you like to talk about that, about how you build tech and how that makes you more competitive in any way?
Yeah, I'd love to give a high level on that. I think one of the things that I think we realized before we even started the company, but became very clear and evident early on, is we very much have always been people that love to bring technology into problem spaces and figure out better ways of doing things. But you can't think of hiring as a logic puzzle where if you just have some computer crunch out some number that matches the thing over here, like boom, now all of a sudden it's like that's their job. Deciding where to work is more about feeling. It's about emotion. And that's where and why we've from the get-go built this company to be a pairing of very talented recruiters with the technology, because you need that empathy, you need the ability to connect and communicate and help bring someone to understand and present them with their dream job. But it can't just be like an email that goes out. It's like, this is your job, like take it right now.
No, right? No, totally get it. And can you walk me through your recruitment process? How is that different from a traditional recruitment agency? So like a traditional recruitment agency, you'd go to a client, they'd say, this is the requisition or job. You'd either take a retainer or just take it on contingency. You'd find them a bunch of candidates, submit those candidates either via email or your ATS or whatever. They would tell you the ones they like. You would set up interviews. Someone would get an offer. They join in a month or so. You raise an invoice, get paid. How's your process different? Or is it the same process?
It's actually the same. That process is pretty much the same, because I think fundamentally we're not kind of coming in trying to say we're innovating on the exact way to do this.
Yeah, sure.
I think we've tried a lot of different things. We've not said, okay, it's just been this way forever, so we're never going to try to change it. But I don't think we're coming in saying that this has been done for decades and all of a sudden, like, there was just some slightly tweak you could make and everything would be way better. People would have figured that out. But so that process that you described is pretty much exactly what we do. I think where we've come in, though, is trying to layer in technology in places that are particularly full of friction or time consuming.
Like, could you give a couple examples on that?
Yeah. So I think there's probably two big categories. One is in terms of the process that our recruiters actually run. There's a lot
Okay.
of work that's highly productive where they're really connecting with candidates, they're really
Yep.
connecting with the client. Like, and there's other stuff that you think of more as the paperwork of the job that gets like can get really messy. And so one, how do we automate or help our team be more effective with some of those things? And a lot of it is around communication and managing a lot
Yeah.
of communication.
And could you be more specific, Arjun, on like maybe like the top one or two things that you saw your people wasting a shitload of time on that you automated and fixed with your tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is just in the process of trying to reach out to
Yep.
a candidate. It's
Yep.
like, how do you figure out how to reach out to them, find their email address, or figure out how you want to connect with them, drafting up the email message,
Yep.
doing the follow-ups. And, there's a lot of engagement tools out there. But again, some are built for recruitment, but I think what we've
Yep.
been able to build really helps our team do that at scale. I mean, the other thing is just all the communications that are going on. And so there's email, there's text, there's phone calls, there's information from the client about a candidate. There's all the candidate communications. There's internal communications between the account manager and the recruiter. There's like all these things going on. And, if that's not organized and structured well, can
And
be a big
and
time waste.
and Arjun, out of interest now, the 30 something people you have doing non-tech stuff,
Mhm.
how are they broken up, right? Like sales versus actual delivery slash recruitment versus account managers. How have you like sort of broken down and set up that business?
Yeah, it's pretty much all on the fulfillment side. So we have
Okay.
our managing director and a team of account managers, and then
Okay.
a team of recruiters that kind of work under them. And so the account
And
managers largely
and are there
manage.
no salespeople, or do account managers do sales?
Sales is still largely with the founders,
Oh, okay.
myself.
So you
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Uh,
We've been fairly fortunate that I think we've done good enough work with a lot of our clients and established
yeah,
good partnerships with some venture capitalists and such that we do manage to get a good amount of inbound business through word of mouth referrals.
got
And
it.
so that helps a lot of us versus us having to go and
So
do very
Arjun,
proactive things.
since you are one of the few venture-backed, recruitment firms, is
Mhm.
one of the key ways of you acquiring clients going to like building a relationship with a strong VC firm, like say an Axel, Benchmark, Sequoia, whatever, and getting
Yeah.
them to basically push you to all of their portfolio companies, which are probably hiring thousands of people every month. Is that
Yeah,
is that sort of the main? Would you say that's
absolutely.
most of your
So
revenue?
I mean, I don't know if it's directly most of the revenue, but it's certainly helpful to have these partnerships because I think what you'll find, with partners that we have like Andreessen Horowitz or NEA or Tribe
Yeah.
Capital, etc. Um, what generally happens with venture funding is, an investor puts in a lot of money for a Series A, Series B, and the
Yeah.
first mandate, as you probably know, is got to hire and build your team.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Immediately.
that's right. And so, we find ourselves very well aligned with these investors that are basically just looking for the best service product, whatever
Got
you,
it.
you want to call
And
it.
and
To
and
do
another
it.
quick question on that, right? So one of the unique things you talked about were containers, and most
Mhm.
recruitment agencies, very few recruitment agencies do containers, right? Because that's sort of like a mass or bulk project in a sense. So
Yeah.
what's the size of your average container? Is it generally like 10 plus roles, 30 plus roles? How
Uh,
large does a container tend to be?
yeah, we don't necessarily do it on bulk. I think for us, it's just about we've just found that by doing the container model, it really brings stronger buy-in from both
Yeah,
sides.
got it.
And, both sides are very clearly motivated to like put the work in. And once that, it, that just giving that commitment of a little bit of money, I think we found just allows for a much more efficient process. But,
But
there are clients we work with that will just take one role and that's
okay,
okay.
that was actually
Because,
my next question. Do you
yeah,
take single roles, or do you have a minimum where you're like, hey, if you're not spending 100K a year with us, we don't want to do this sort of
no, I mean
situation?
that's a lot of our approach and philosophy. So I remember, Hippo Insurance, which is now a public
Yeah,
company,
yeah,
probably about 3 years back. I remember going to their office. there were about 30 people. They would do like this Friday barbecue.
Yeah.
And so I happened to be around then. And we were talking to the director of engineering. And I think we started off with maybe two roles. It was like a QA
Right.
analyst and a senior software engineer. And that's totally fine because in the world and with the clients that we work with, that company, Hippo Insurance, is now a public company. We're still working with them. We're
Wow.
still helping hire, and now we're doing
And,
many more roles. So I think we view it as a partnership that will grow over time. And so we really think about it as kind of a long run.
and Arjun, would it be accurate to say that your median client, like if you took all of your clients and ranked them from the ones that pay you the most per year to the least per year, is your median client over 100K a year? Like you basically doing five, 6+ positions with them, or is it more distributed where you have tons of clients with just one or two jobs?
It's probably a little more distributed. I think it's, maybe not the median. Maybe once you get to like the 60th, 70th percentile, then
Got
you're
it.
probably at
Got it.
five.
So yeah. So your top 25 or 30% of customers are probably
Definitely.
each spending over
Definitely.
100K with you. Got it. And that's beautiful. Like congratulations on an awesome business. And are you profitable now, or since you've just raised it 18 months ago, are you reinvesting that into growing?
Yeah. Luckily, we are profitable now. And I think
Got it.
as 2020 was a tough year, but we worked really aggressively to bring on new clients that we're still managing to hire through the pandemic. And this year is now, I'm sure as everyone's seen, has been a lot of companies making up
Yeah.
for their lost hiring last year. And so it's been
Yeah.
a really strong year. So we've been able to continue to aggressively grow. Just this year, basically our team has doubled in size, but we're still managing to do so profitably, which has been really great.
That's amazing. And just to finish up, right? What would be sort of your advice to your 20-year-old self in that college dorm room writing
Yeah.
some code? Like, what advice would you give yourself?
I think it is having a little bit of humility to the customer,
Okay.
and in or the client, however you want to think about it. But
Yeah.
I remember building a lot of software, and although I was in many cases the consumer of that product,
Yeah.
I would be playing the games that I was making. So I think in many ways I did understand the need of the consumer, but it doesn't mean you yourself can kind of singularly
Yeah.
decide what you
Yeah.
think is best
Yeah.
and like kind of ignore everyone that's talking to you. And so, not to say we were completely that brash, but I would have probably perked my ears open a
Be
little
more
bit more.
humble, right? Like
Yeah.
just straight up. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. And what's your situation like today? Are you single? Are you married? Do you have kids, dogs, cats? Like what's Arjun's life like?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So
Yeah.
it is very different. I no longer live in an apartment with my co-founder and
Roommate.
share a room. Yeah. um, but yeah, things have changed a lot because yet again, back then I basically could just work all the damn time.
Yeah.
Now I have fewer hours in the week to work, but I can work smarter. So I'm married now. I have two kids. One just started kindergarten. He's 5. One's about to start preschool next week. He's 3.
You're
So I have two
busy.
boys.
That sounds hard. You're just out of like probably potty training, right? Like
That's right.
between the two kids, and so life will progressively get better.
Yeah,
Oh.
and it's already nice. It's like we don't have to carry the diaper bag around, which is a huge win for the parents out there. That no, yeah,
That is amazing. And what are the growth plans for the next 3 or 4 years? Is the goal to like grow linearly as like adding more staff and becoming 100, 200, 300 person firm? Or are you trying to like figure out more ways that you can automate more processes where you don't have to hire more people, but you make more money? Like I understand that both will likely happen, even if you
yeah.
invest more in tech. But is the goal like, hey, we already have the tech, it works. Let's just like hire 10x the people and make this go crazy? Or do you still think there are more large inefficiencies in your business that you need to fix?
It's a good question. I think it's a bit of both, but I don't think we're not planning for we're working towards this milestone. As soon as that happens, it's going to change the economics drastically. It's going to be gradual improvements in the tech,
Yeah.
and I think at the same time we're going to have largely linear growth on our headcount. But I think when you add that together, your efficiency goes from 1x to 1.1x to 1.2x and linear growth, and you'll start to get a little bit more of a exponential growth there per se.
Got it.
But I think where with our core business, the way we're working with our vertically, largely tech vertical, largely startups, we're planning to expand into other verticals and other industries. And so as we do that, there'll be new challenges. We'll figure those things out. And that's where we'll also have the area for expansion. Again, the large companies out there aren't just doing one thing. They do a lot of things. And so that's definitely in the playbook.
And last question, right? So we obviously talked about the advice you'd give your 20-year-old self. But what if someone who's 25 or 30 or 35 comes to you now and they say, hey, Arjun, I want to get into recruitment. This sounds like an awesome industry. What advice would you give them other than coming working for you? Right? What advice would you give these guys?
I think it's hard to say what's the one general piece of advice. I think a lot of it is contextual. The other thing I've realized is that I always caveat advice because I'm like, I don't know anything about you, so I'm just going to tell you one thing and don't let that shape your future forever.
Cool.
But I think in general, I think maybe what people that don't understand the business deeply quite get is you might say, oh, look, the fees are so good, there's all this money and that. But for the recruiters that on our team and the recruiters out in the world that are doing this every day, they know just how challenging and difficult and grueling it is.
Job.
Right?
It's hard. It's a sales job, right? You're constantly selling.
You get the candidate to their offer, and you think it's all about to close. Maybe they even verbally accept it, and then Sunday night they change their mind.
I bet. Have you had situations where people have basically joined and then quit in 2 days because they were like, I didn't like the vibe, and then
absolutely. Yeah. We have a guarantee period, and then there's certainly on occasion candidates find out it doesn't fit. What we find more often though is that if they're going to flake out, it would be right at either before they start, or maybe they've said they've accepted, but then they don't quite get there.
Got it. And have you ever had and I'm obviously I'm out of off my script now, but I'm just curious, right? A lot of recruitment agencies that work with small firms have issues getting paid on time, right? Mm-hmm. Have you dealt with the same issues? Because you mostly work with well-funded venture-backed firms. Have you had situations where people just don't pay?
It's the same model.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know if we've ever had any serious issue with someone just never paying, but the collections time, our accounts receivable is a big amount. Yeah, it takes a while to get it.
And is accounts receivables, and of course we're not talking about the exact numbers, but do account receivables exceed monthly revenue or quarterly revenue, or how big can it get when it's bad? Obviously fluctuates up and down.
I think somewhere between 1 and 2 months of revenue. It partly depends on how aggressive we are in trying to collect it.
That's not so bad. That for recruitment, that's not terrible, right? That's just fine. Brilliant. That was awesome. I really appreciate this, Arjun. I think people watching this will get a lot of context. You might even have people reaching out to you on LinkedIn and asking you how to raise money for recruitment business. But thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sean. It was great speaking with you, and good to get to know you better as well.
And that's all for today's episode of Recruitment Entrepreneurs. Like and follow us if you liked today's episode and want to hear more stories from the world of recruitment.